Hello, folks. Today we're going to talk about the basics of spirituality for practitioners. In the last video, I talked about mindfulness and getting out of the way of your own ego. These are important things to do for everybody on a spiritual path, but especially for practitioners. All too often, somebody gets interested in the lesser keys of Solomon, witchcraft, channeling, astral travel, you name it, but they don't pay enough attention to tackling their ego and shadow work. I explained the importance of this before, but let me explain it in a different way this time. The physical world we live in works on the basis of motion, the motion of atoms or electrons, all the way to large structures and objects such as our physical bodies or the planets. But if you're thinking of interacting with the spiritual planes, thinking of things in a physical sense can get you into some trouble. This is because the spiritual plane works on intention instead of motion. Things are attracted or repelled from one another based on the level of quantum vibration. In our physical world, this is usually seen as emotion or attitude. We've all been in a room with those who are less clued into their own emotions and don't even realize the attitude that is wafting off of them, but the rest of the room is definitely picking up on it. This is a really good example of not understanding your unconscious emotions. When working in the spiritual plane, things can be surprising. The best analogy I have is this. For a moment, I want you to imagine making a phone call. In the physical world, we dial the number, and the number rings on the device on the other end. A specific number goes to a specific device. No matter how you are feeling or what you are doing, the same thing happens every single time. You dial a number, a specific phone rings. In the spiritual plane, if you were to make the same proverbial phone call, the phone that rings on the other end depends on the vibration or the emotional vibrations you are giving off, both consciously and unconsciously. So for those who have tons of unanswered questions or emotions in their life and don't recognize it, it is very possible that a completely different person or entity that you did not intend begins contacting you. That is because the energy, entity, or spirit you have contacted has either picked up on unconscious energy that you have purposely decided to ignore, or some people leave themselves wide open to contact from anything and everything, which can be equally devastating. Now, consequently, there are countless stories of people trying to manifest and suddenly bad things begin happening to them, or they throw a few spells out into the world and again a bunch of high strangeness begins happening. This is because if you don't recognize your shadow self, if you don't learn to manage your ego, you end up attracting all sorts of things because your ego is generating a vibrational frequency which you couldn't be bothered to recognize. The same goes for protection. Not knowing how to protect yourself against unwanted energies and entities can lead to some problematic issues. So let's get into this. Welcome to Energy Pathworking, where we discuss the theory and practice of the mystic arts across the planes. Mindfulness, as mentioned before, is just general good housekeeping for the human experience. As a person continues to practice mindfulness, they inevitably begin to realize the difference between feeling an emotion and acting on an emotion. Then they begin to focus on separating learned or conditioned emotions and actions from how they actually feel in the present moment. This is the beginning of recognizing the ego and the difference between the ego and the higher self. If you continue on this journey long enough, this is when you begin to learn the value of discernment. That is, the difference between levels of vibration, or in other words, intention. As a practitioner, discernment is crucial. One immediately knows when there is an unintended entity present. It is also a lot easier to spot tricksters, because discernment sees through the masks and the veils that people and entities show to the outside world. It's important to note, on a social level, once you get good at discernment, your tolerance for deceit, no matter how playful, becomes close to non-existent. For those practitioners working with clients, reaching discernment is a requirement. because it becomes so much easier to pick up on the energy of others in order to read or channel it. I could not imagine doing a tarot reading without being able to get out of my own way spiritually. You need to be able to completely leave yourself behind in order to connect to the person in front of you or to other energies and entities across the planes. The next big stage I discussed in the last video is awareness. Awareness is the entrance to the spiritual experience. As a practitioner, you may be able to delve into a specific form of divination or experience, but it can be difficult to expand beyond this without awareness. Just like having awareness of your environment in the physical plane, once you set your ego aside, you need to have awareness in the spiritual plane so you can understand all of the experiences around you. Awareness is crucial when it comes to things like astral projection, remote viewing, and for those of you who want to work directly with entities and spirits. While I do not partake in practices of Goetia or the Lesser Keys of Solomon, I know it would not be wise to focus on such practices if the practitioner has not reached the stage of awareness. This is because it is easy to stray away from awareness when you haven't even seen glimpses of it. Usually entities are able to do this by preying on vanity. Over the millennia, many human and angel have fallen prey to the many ways that vanity can be used to sway them away from awareness. Finally, shadow work. While shadow work might be an exercise that people go through to reach a specific goal, for the practitioner, it is a never-ending cycle. This is because if you are consistently working with clients, like for instance the legions of people who are interested in shamanism these days, your ego will try and find new and interesting ways to get back in control. The more you are in contact with the spiritual plane, the more you need to be away from your ego, and therefore the more your ego will try to get back into control. While the ego is needed in social situations in your daily life, the ego is detrimental and can mislead you during spiritual activity. So shadow work is a near constant practice for the spiritual practitioner, just like scales are a daily warm-up for a musician. In effect, shadow work creates the best form of self-protection and is always your first line of defense. Now, mindfulness, awareness, and shadow work are the main fundamentals for spiritual practitioners. There is a lot of subtlety that goes into it beyond what I've discussed today, and getting good at each of these can take years. That doesn't mean you can't be a practitioner until then, but I would grow your practices and rituals along with your fundamentals. Now, I've been working on some additional videos which I will be releasing in the coming weeks. I will make a more concerted effort this year to bring out videos in a regular fashion so I can grow the channel. Forthcoming videos are to be based on the information I've gleaned from my practices, studies, and from helping others. Specifically, the videos that I'm working on right now, one of them is going to be the 10 Paths of Mystical Philosophy and Practice. This is an attempt to tackle some common questions I often get that don't seem to be in one place. Another video, Entities, Energies, and Spirits Encountered Across the Planes. I'm also going to be starting a series on angels and demons. I'll be detailing the Enochian system as well as the Shem HaMephoresh, and also how I've worked with these through tarot over the years. This will probably be a small series, and if you've been looking for a way to get beyond Dee and Kelly, this is your chance, because there's not a lot of information out there. Another series that is coming is Pathworking the Shadow through each chakra. Again, shadow work seems to be very difficult for people to come by. This will help folks with dealing with their shadow work for the first time. If you found this content useful, please support the channel by hitting the subscribe button. Once again, thank you for watching Energy Pathworking, where we discuss the theory and practice of mystic arts across the planes.